Your Majesty, Mr. President, Mr. Prime Minister, Ministers, Excellencies, students and cadets, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to Karlberg Palace and the Swedish Defence University. My name is Robert Egnell, an immensely proud Vice-Chancellor today, as every day, of the Swedish Defence University. We have trained officers in this magnificent environment since 1792, making it the world's oldest military academy with uninterrupted officer training. But today, the Swedish Defence University is an internationally leading and vibrant academic and professional environment that not only trains officers at all levels, but that also educates civilians aiming for a career in defense, security, and crisis management. We also provide cutting-edge research to make Sweden and the world a safer place. The university takes great pride in being a meeting place between the civilian and the military worlds, between theory and practice, the academy and the profession, and national and international perspectives. It's this mix of background and perspective that provides a rather unique environment for academic and professional excellence at the university. But I must confess that not every day at the university provides a meeting quite like today. But these are also not normal times. We find ourselves in an international context in which Russia challenges the European security order, not least through its vicious and unlawful war in Ukraine. An international context in which the challenges to our societies are simply too many and too multifaceted to even list during this brief introduction. But in the face of adversity, we have also witnessed unity and resolve in Europe and across the transatlantic community. Something that provides hope and something we can build on for the future. In this very challenging international context, it gives us at the university great joy and pride to be able to share the unique environment of this academy with the most relevant guests and speakers possible to provide us with leadership, resolve and unity. So on this not so average day at the Swedish Defence University, we have the honor of listening to speeches on the future of European security by His Majesty the King, His Excellency Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson, and His Excellency Monsieur Emmanuel Macron, President de la République Française. Again, a very warm welcome to you all, and I hereby invite Your Majesty to the podium to start us off. Thank you.
Mr. President, officers, cadets, ladies and gentlemen, we live in a troubled time. The world is facing several parallel crises. Russia's brutal war of aggression against Ukraine has changed Europe in many ways. It has first and foremost created great suffering for the Ukrainian people. But Russia's aggression has also led to Europe acting together. Together, the EU has imposed sanctions and support Ukraine in the fight for freedom. Our cooperation within the EU is stronger than perhaps ever before. We support Ukraine, and our support is long-term. The people of Ukraine shall know that we admire their courage. For Sweden, Russia's war on Ukraine has led to a major change in our security policy. We are leaving a policy of non-alignment in order to become part of an alliance. In the meantime, until we are, well, full member of NATO. Sweden has also received security guarantees from France and other countries. And of course, for this we are very, very deeply grateful. Thank you. The situation in the world is worrying in many ways. My family and I, like many others, were deeply shocked by Hamas' horrific attack on many innocent civilians in Israel. Sweden and the world has condemned this brutal attack. Many of us are now following the development closely in the region. It is a very difficult situation, especially in Gaza. Daily, we are thinking of the families of all the innocent civilian victims, including the many, many children. Furthermore, the situation in our immediate neighborhood, in the Arctic and the Baltic Sea, also requires us to be vigilant. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, I am very much looking forward to listen to today's seminar on our common challenges. With my experience, I know that we must learn from history. It requires a long-term perspective, and it requires cooperation between friends and friendly nations. So thank you very much, and good luck.
Your Majesty, Mr. President, Excellencies, officers, cadets, ladies and gentlemen. First, the obvious. France and Sweden's friendship is extraordinary. There is probably no better symbol of this than the origins of our Swedish royal house and the fact that you, Mr. President, today are the third French president to visit Stockholm during His Majesty's reign. That's impressive. But our relationship is surely not primarily based on shared history, but on shared values and aspirations for the future. The French Revolution taught us that liberté, égalité, fraternité are fundamental principles for building good societies, and these principles still unite us today. More than most people realize, ideas and values determine the direction of the world. But ideas without action easily become meaningless. Or as your predecessor, Charles de Gaulle, once said, no policy is worth anything outside of reality. Today, the free world is challenged by authoritarian forces in pursuit of an order where might is right. Maintaining the rules-based world order and respect for international law are central security policy interests for Sweden and for France. As you, Emmanuel, pointed out in your speech in Bratislava last year, peace in Ukraine and on our continent cannot mean accepting Russia to use force in blatant violation of international law. France and Sweden do not only share values, we share a struggle. Bilaterally and in the EU, Sweden and France have taken important steps in support of Ukraine's resilience and capacity to defend itself. So far, Sweden has contributed around 2.6 billion euros to Ukraine. Within the EU, we have also adopted macroeconomic support and several sanctions packages against Russia. Brave Ukrainian soldiers are fighting every day, and Ukraine's security and freedom are closely linked to ours. It is also our security and our freedom that Ukraine is defending. Almost every Swede realized that 2 years ago in the early morning of February 24th. EU military assistance mission in support of Ukraine is currently on track to train some 40,000 Ukrainian soldiers. The European Peace Facility has been crucial in facilitating EU member states' donations of military equipment to Ukraine. As a result of a Swedish initiative, the EU is also supporting Moldova and other partner states in our close neighborhood to manage threats and to build resilience. These threats against Europe are becoming increasingly complex, ranging from conventional to hybrid, including disinformation, cyber attacks, terrorism, attacks against critical infrastructure, and exploitation of economic dependencies. So, what to do? First of all, I fully agree with President Macron on the need for a stronger and more capable Europe. France and Sweden share the view that Europe needs to take greater strategic responsibility in an increasingly challenging security situation. Let me emphasize that a strong Europe goes hand in hand with a strong transatlantic link. Obviously, we cannot decide America's choices for the future, but I would like to recognize the strong US commitment so far and hope and how important that commitment is also for the future. We do believe the EU can play a key role in strengthening Europe's ability to act as a credible security provider, for example, by investing in the European defense industrial base, enhancing military mobility and developing capabilities to counter hybrid and cyber threats. Exactly as Sweden and France are already partners in the EU, we will soon be allies within NATO. And on behalf of all Swedes, allow me to express again my gratitude to France and to you, Mr. President, for your firm support for a swift NATO accession. That means a lot to us. By joining NATO, Sweden will leave, as His Majesty just told us, over 200 years of military non-alignment behind, and we will complete the process we started with our EU membership back in 1995. NATO is the backbone of collective defense of the Euro-Atlantic area. This is especially true in the Baltic region, where the Russian threats are present every day. The naval city of Karlskrona, in the southeast corner of Sweden, actually built once with inspiration from France, is closer to the Russian exclave of Kaliningrad than it is to Stockholm. I strongly welcome the increased French military presence in our region. Contrary to Russia's aims and expectations, the EU and NATO have been united and determined in our support to Ukraine. The EU's key role in the transatlantic community has been consolidated, and the strength of the EU's broad toolbox complementing NATO's has been tried and tested. Sweden stands ready to shoulder its responsibility, not only for the Baltic Sea and the High North, but for the entire Euro-Atlantic area. This year, we will meet the NATO standard by spending more than 2% of GDP on defense. Bearing our fair share of the security burden will be an important part of our alliance policy. And it is probably no news to anyone in this room that we also are providing modern and well-trained armed forces in the air, in the sea and under the surface, in the very cold snow, intelligence, special forces, surveillance. Swedish and French soldiers have worked together on the same task in the same environment it has been important for us to better understand the geopolitical realities of Europe's southern neighborhood. Today, Sweden is facing an increased threat of attacks by terrorists and violent extremists. The experience of France in defending democracy and the open society against, for example, radical Islamism is most valuable to Sweden in our efforts to prevent radicalization and violent extremism on our soil. We therefore welcome our mutual decision to deepen the cooperation between our countries in the area of internal security. External and internal security are increasingly interconnected. So are trade and geopolitics. Don't underestimate the geopolitical dimension of trade as a way of enhancing Europe's global influence. Russia's energy warfare has highlighted the need for greater focus on energy security and European energy production. It has also accelerated the need to work closer together with friends and trusted partners for increased security of supply. Through the renewed strategic innovation partnership between Sweden and France that we signed earlier today, we are deepening our cooperation in a number of important fields, including nuclear energy for the very first time. Nuclear energy is key to fight climate change and strengthen security of electricity supply. I'm very pleased that we now have embarked on a long-term bilateral cooperation in the nuclear energy sector. To conclude, security is obviously about the obligation to defend your own country physically. But security is more than that. It's about values, it's about principles, it's about dignity. Liberté, égalité, fraternité. I'll teach you in Swedish. Frihet, jämlikhet, broderskap. Three very complicated but equally beautiful words. Thank you so much.
Your Majesty, Mr. Prime Minister, ministers, members of parliament, officers and cadets, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. Everything was said. And perfectly by Your Majesty and Mr. Prime Minister, so I don't want to repeat, and I will try to get short and direct, perhaps much more on the situation in Ukraine. And I suggest to answer your questions and to have a more interactive session afterwards. But very often I repeated the necessity to have a more sovereign Europe. And it was for a lot of people a sort of mystery of a paradox to speak about sovereignty referring to Europe. And I do insist on this notion. What does it mean? Having more autonomy and deciding the cooperation we want to build, but not depending on others for what is core for us. This sovereignty is stronger now than it was a few years ago. Unhappily, the Russian aggression against Ukraine was part of the triggering point of more sovereignty in our Europe. But we did improve this sovereignty, and we are building it together. And I think our partnership, Mr. Prime Minister, you perfectly referred to this document, and from our defense industry to our nuclear energy, our research, and so on, we are building a stronger cooperation, serving a stronger and a more sovereign Europe. But very clearly, we have today a much more sovereign Europe. We are ready to design and conduct operations together abroad. This is what we are doing in the Red Sea today. This is what we did together in Africa, thanks to Takuba. We design a much more European defense, the European Initiative for Intervention, creating more intimacy between our armies, and you joined this initiative, and this is around such a framework that we work together in Africa. We built a European Defence Fund. We built, you refer to that, a European Peace Facility, which is a big success and was totally new in order to provide equipment and financing to a third party like Ukraine. We designed, few weeks after the beginning of this war, a common sovereign agenda. We called it the Versailles Agenda. We were all together in order to reduce our strategic dependencies. But in technology, energy, defense, economic capacities, we decided precisely to work closely together to have more European answers. Clearly, we started to reverse decades of falling defense expenditures. We started after Crimea in 2014, and we accelerated during the past 2 years. And altogether, we are spending more and more money and building common capacities and common projects between Europeans. And your decision to join NATO is part of this strategic awakening. And I want to reiterate here our full support and to congratulate you about the fact that this decision is absolutely critical, having such an important member joining now in this very region our alliance. On top of that, we reacted very rapidly right after the aggression. We put sanctions all together, we preserved our unity as Europeans, and we managed to send support financing to Ukraine during the past 2 years. In parallel, we put our defense industry on a war footing, and we increased the churn rates, we reopened production lines, we placed new orders and reduced administrative constraints on our industry to produce much more and much more rapidly. And we were lucky to have a US partner very much involved with all of us. Here are just a few remarks to highlight how much stronger we were all together and more sovereign we were all together. And all these key decisions were not obvious for a lot of people 2 or 3 years ago. So clearly, the past 2 years were characterized after the aggression of Russia by this strategic move and all these reactions. Now, the war in Ukraine will be a long-term effort, and clearly now, this is a testing moment and a decisive moment for all of us. Both of you mentioned the importance of the challenge, and I want to insist on the fact that even if we can be very proud of these recent decisions and the moves we made, I strongly believe that we have to do much more. First, we will have to be ready to act, defend, and support Ukraine whatever happens and whatever the US decision will be. I think we are very lucky to have such a partner, to have such an ally. But very clearly, we have to be lucid on the fact that Ukraine is part of the European continent. And whatever the US will decide, we have to take the right and bold decision to support Ukraine and the Ukrainian people. And we have to follow the line in the current strategy, which is it is impossible for all of us to see Russia winning this war. Because there is no more framework and architecture of security in our continent if this is a Russian victory. What is the future of our eastern flank? What is the future of the whole Europe? What is the future of Caucasus? What is the future of Central Asia if the result of such an international involvement will be a victory for Russia? So the cost, the real cost on the short to long run of a Russian victory is too high for all of us. This is why the reasonable answer is to put ourselves in a situation to support Ukraine during this year and the years to come. whatever it takes, whatever it costs. This support should be through weapons and ammunitions, training programs, and everything they will need in order to resist the Russian aggression and put themselves, meaning the Ukrainians, in a situation to negotiate a sustainable peace, meaning a peace decided by the Ukrainians and a peace respecting international order and international rules. This is why, whatever we decided and we did, clearly we will have in the months to come to accelerate and scale up our effort. In terms of production, let's be clear, and perhaps in terms of nature. It will request a lot of national decisions. It will request some clear European decision, and we will make the follow-up on Thursday with our dear colleagues in Brussels. It will request to have perhaps some innovative answer, and I want to praise our colleague Kaya Kallas, and she proposed a very bold decision for our defense industry strategy in order to have a sort of grants approach in order to raise more money to finance this effort. I mean, I'm ready to take all this adapted decision and build the consensus, but very clearly, we will have to take additional decision, and we will have to adapt ourselves as well to more production. Because let's be clear, even if we made a lot of efforts in order to produce more and more rapidly, if we compare ourselves to the Russian effort today, it's not at scale, and it's not the right speed. They managed to completely readapt their system, so we have to react and even overreact to be alongside with the Ukrainians. In parallel, I think we have clearly to follow up, so strengthening this effort, strengthening production, be ready to take national and European decision, and preempt any US decision not to be dependent on any change. In parallel, I would like to insist on a few critical points for me for the future. It will guide us to a strengthening of European defense. I insisted several times on this issue. Europe of defense is not a substitute to NATO. And it's even more important for you today than it was for yesterday. But clearly, this is one critical pillar of NATO. This is our way to take our own fair share, and this is a necessity because we speak about our own neighborhood. So on top of that, let's follow up the strengthening of this European defense, meaning we need more innovation, more common programs, and more clear operational intimacy. What we started with the European initiative for intervention should be strengthened and deepened in the months and years to come in order to have a much more European operational approach. And interoperability based on NATO experience is an asset. We have to do the same as well with common program. I think our common partnership will allow us to do much more together, and with our defense industry, we will have to follow up. Third, we have to follow up and deliver our Versailles agenda, meaning we need much more sovereignty and autonomy on our energy, our technologies, and our capacity to produce. And I think one of the wake-up calls we should not forget is that during years and years, we thought that making trade and exchanging energy with Russia was the best way to prevent a war. It was a mistake. It was the best way to suffer from a war and suffer from a unilateral decision. So we should not replicate this approach. So let's diversify our relation, but let's refuse to depend on anybody else. When we speak about our energy, we have to produce our low-carbon energy, more renewable, more nuclear, more efficiency. European solutions. It's part of our mid to long run security. When we speak about our technology, our artificial intelligence and so on, it's great to have a super partner. But we want to choose and design our future. So let's work hard in order to preserve European solutions and European innovations. When we speak about space, and both of us have this advantage to have the capacity to send satellites and launchers with our bases, let's preserve a European access to space. The decision we took in Sevilla and Ariane 6 to come. But more than that, the full range of innovation, civilian and defense innovation are absolutely critical for this war and the years to come. My last point is about how to deal with our neighbors and how to frame our own architecture. I think part of what's happening in Ukraine is due to the fact that probably we were, as Europeans, in a situation of geopolitical minority. We were not, and we didn't put ourselves in a situation to decide for our own territory. All the treaties were decided by former USSR and USA. Everything which covered our territory was decided by the big guys in the room, not by the Europeans themselves. And it seems that we were quite happy with such a situation. I think we have to be part of those to decide for ourselves. When it is about INF, when it is about deployments, when it is about arms control for today and tomorrow, when it is about designing our architecture of security, we have to be the one to decide. And this is to be designed during this period of war. And this is why our involvement for the Ukrainians is not just for them to prevent any Russian victory, but it is for us to be around the table to decide for our future, because Ukraine is part of our future, being part of our continent. There is no future for ourselves and our children if we are not in a situation to build the new architecture of security, of arms control, and neighboring of the whole region. But we have to be the one to decide it for ourselves, and not to delegate it to big powers, even if they are very good allies, because they live on the other side of the ocean. It's probably more simple. And I think it's very important in this moment to have in the back of our mind the fact that this is because of our current involvement, then we can put ourselves in a situation to prevent any Russian victory, but we will be legitimate as well to be part of those to define and design this future architecture, which is absolutely critical. NATO will be part of it, but NATO should not have the exclusivity of this architecture. And as Europeans, we clearly have to be part of such a new architecture. And I speak as a faithful partner, a robust expeditionary military power, and a nuclear weapon state whose vital interests have a European dimension. And we offer the specific dialogue on this. And for me, it's important to reiterate this point here in front of you. I want to thank you for the opportunity to share just these few remarks. But let me tell you how much we respect your country, your armed forces, your commitment, and the friendship you had and the quality of cooperation we had during the past few years. And let me reiterate here our support for your current project, but as well your project in the futures. And each time it will be difficult, be sure that you can count on France. Thank you.
Mr. President, thank you so much for a strong message of friendship and unity, also a message of resolve. a more sovereign Europe with autonomous capabilities to defend its own interests, but also the courage to make the right decisions, not least regarding Ukraine. Thank you for that. I'm delighted to say that we have a few minutes left for questions, and I'm sure our cadets and students are eager to learn more. So grab a microphone, introduce yourselves, and please keep the questions brief. Please.
Mr. President, my name is Annie Kjellberg and I represent the Officers Programme. My question for you focuses a bit on what His Majesty was mentioning about long-term perspectives. During your remaining mandate period as President, what policies, relations or processes do you see as key factors to implement and secure in order to build and maintain a long-term, fruitful relationship, military cooperational-wise, European intervention initiatives or military-industrial cooperational-wise between France and Sweden? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Look, I think we improved enormously during the past few years, as I mentioned, our cooperation. We launched, you mentioned it in your question, the European Initiative for Intervention. And I think we have now 10 countries being part of it, and even 12. And you decided to join, and it allowed us to build cooperation and common operations. On top of that, you have a very strong model in terms of production. We have a very strong model in terms of production, and we are starting to create bridges and common programs precisely because of this very context. And from equipments to weapons and missiles and ammunition, we are working closely together now to build common capacities for our armies and our good friends and our partners. So I think, based on what exists, what we managed to do during the past few years, what we are doing in Europe, and the fact that your country just decided to join NATO and will improve the interoperability with the other armies, I think in the years to come, we have a lot of ways to improve the relationship and to improve concretely the partnership between our armies. First, with additional common programs, and perhaps by having your country joining existing common programs in Europe. We have big capacities to create a lot of innovations. I think it will be great. And I don't want to exclude, we didn't discuss a lot about this new aspect, but cyber and space are clearly two areas of conflictuality for the future where we have a lot of things to do in common. In parallel, I do hope that we will have the opportunity to use this both interoperability but this intimacy in terms of intervention, to have common intervention on the ground, training program, security program, in order precisely to anchor this link. And third, I think what we are building with the new facilities will allow us to build additional greenfield projects. And I'm a strong believer of the capacity to build both capacities and operational projects together. This is, for instance, what we did with the Belgians, with CAMO project. And this is a role model. And this is probably one of the models we can develop and deploy with your army and with your government.
More questions. Who's next? Please.
Mr. President, my name is Simon Glad and I represent the Officers Programme. France is in the possession of a capable and robust naval force, additionally the only EU country with an independent nuclear force. Is there a French sense of responsibility in the protection and preservation of European security and unity regarding the development of the Arctic Sea Passage and its potential geopolitical influence?
Definitely yes. Not in an escalatory way, but being alongside our allies and our European partners in order to preserve, I would say, freedom and sovereignty and the key liberties which should be guaranteed by our international laws, yes. So we feel this very specific responsibility. In parallel, I reiterated at the end of my speech, but a few years ago I was very clear on the fact that for us, part of our vital interests, clearly what we design and define as our vital interest as a European dimension, which gives us a special responsibility given precisely what we have and the deterrence capacity we have, to be clear.
And I think this will be the final question.
Oh, thank you. Mr. President, my name is Elena Fredriksson, and I'm attending the Higher Officers Program. You have spoken a lot about collaboration, and I have a question on the subject. I would like you to elaborate on your views on the security in the Baltic Sea region and a potential increased NATO presence there. And on that matter, what's the French perspective on collaboration between France and the neighboring countries to the Baltic Sea in general and Sweden in particular? Thank you.
We are very keen to have more cooperation, and I think you are perceived in the former session we had together. Our experts insisted very fairly on the fact that your country is perceived as a security provider for the whole region, by the way, and part of those providing security solutions to the whole region. It's clear that Baltic Sea security and stability will be at stake, or at least will be one of the geography where we will be collectively tested. And I mentioned the fact that if we take the new areas of conflictuality, we are focused, all of us, on a continental war in Ukraine. But we should not forget that maritime space, and cyber will be probably three critical areas. And if we take Russia, they will overuse hybridity and multiply the areas of confrontation, not to be trapped just in a unique approach, a territorial and a continental war. So we are totally ready to have this type of cooperation. And by the way, it's not contingent to NATO. It could be framed and designed in a due and, I would say, a sort of per se object and cooperation. But we are already largely involved in this type of cooperation. We launched a de facto cooperation with Romania a few days after the beginning of the war. We have an historical and existing presence with a lot of states on the eastern flank, both terrestrial or through our aircraft presence. And we are obviously part of a lot of exercises in Mediterranean Sea already, in Atlantic Ocean, and we are ready to participate to Baltic Sea initiatives and operations with you in order to send some strategic signals and or have very concrete intervention. By the way, this is exactly what we are doing with some of our key players in Red Sea at this very moment in a different context. We discussed less today about what's happening in Gaza and in Israel. But one of the consequences, as you know, is are the terrorist attacks led by the Houthi. And we decided to have a defensive presence and to preserve freedom of navigation in this region by this presence. So to be very clear and blunt with you, we are ready and we will be very happy and honored to participate to this kind of exercise or this kind of operation in the Baltic Sea.
It is unfortunately time to draw a line. Please join me in thanking His Majesty, the Prime Minister, but especially our honored guest, President Emmanuel Macron, for not only providing us with a great message of strength, but also taking the time to answer a number of very difficult questions from our students. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Your Majesty. Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. Thank you.